chapter 5 of why I chose to live in Ho Chi Minh City, or why I chose Ho Chi Minh City to live, whichever one you want to say. Chapter 5, why I settled in this beautiful city. All about how I settled down to live a real life. It's pretty tough. Anyway, here it is, chapter 5. Enjoy.
Chapter 5. Settling down in Ho Chi Minh City. After my holiday in 2012, something inside me refused to let go. Vietnam had lodged itself in part of me that went deeper than curiosity. I had this underlying passion to return, to explore more of it, to be part of it. I suppose what I really wanted was to make the dream a reality. The one I had carried since childhood and had been forced to set aside for years out of necessity, out of survival. But I never gave up on it. Not really. And so in August 2013, I stepped off the plane at Tan Son Nhat Airport for what felt like the first time that actually counted. No tourist feeling this time. No return flight booked for 2 weeks later. This time I had no home to go to. No caravan, no job, no plan. Just a bag, a decision, and a particular brand of terrified excitement that only comes when you have burned the bridge behind you. I remember the first night in a way that is difficult to explain. I had rented a cheap room close to Bui Vinh Street, about as central gets in Ho Chi Minh City, for a few nights while I got my bearings. I lay on a narrow bed above the street noise and listened to the city. There was no silence. There was never any silence. Ho Chi Minh City does not do quiet at 11 o'clock at night. From below came the sounds of the street, voices and music, and the particular clatter of somewhere that stays alive long after it should reasonably be expected to settle down. And lying there, I thought to myself, this is either the bravest or the stupidest thing you have ever done. 3 days later, I still had not worked out which one it was. But by then, it was too late to go back, and honestly, I didn't want to. It was a new start, and that new start was as scary as hell. Uncertain, with no clear pathway forward. Vietnam, with all its noises and colour and cultural complexity, placed me on a rocky road into the future that, in those early weeks, didn't feel like a future at all. But I had friends here. A few girls mostly, women I'd met during previous visits and charity work. They stepped up and helped me sort out the basics. The first priority was a roof. I eventually found a room close to Bui Vinh Street, right in the middle of Ho Chi Minh City, which was cheap enough and central enough to work as a base while I figured out what came next. Now, here is the little secret I never really told anyone at the time. Before I moved to Vietnam in 2013, I'd purchased a small bar. The idea was to run a business, make it work, build something of my own. The bar was old, run down, with nothing more than a counter and a few tired fridges. From August through to December, I worked hard at trying to get it to run a profit. What I hadn't counted on was the culture and the bureaucracy. I didn't understand it, and more importantly, I didn't have the ability to manage it. Frustration set in quickly and kept building. There were incidents, drunk patrons getting violent, local gangs circling, criminal activity happening in the shadows around me. And then there was a man on the payroll, a detail I only discovered after I'd taken the place over. He had a murder conviction to his name and was running marijuana out of my bar as a sideline, which meant I was vicariously involved in something I had no interest in and no business being anywhere near. I had thought this world was my scene. Standing there with all of it around me, I had to be straight with myself. It just wasn't. At the same time, I say at the same time because that's exactly how it happened, I met an Australian man who told me his company was desperate for English teachers. Now, back in Australia, I had set myself up with a certificate to teach English as a foreign language, more or less because I suspected I might need it one day. That certificate became my lifeline. I stepped in and started teaching at schools around the city, and something unexpected happened. I took to it immediately, naturally, in a way that surprised me. I didn't know I had it in me as a teacher. Turns out I did. So there I was, with this strange conundrum on my hands. On one side, a bar I was failing at spectacularly. On the other side, a teaching gig that was covering my bills, paying the basics, and giving me something to feel good about. It didn't take long to work out which one had a future. By the end of 2013, the decision was made. I listed the bar for sale, found a buyer, and got out. That 4-month stint cost me around 10,000 Australian dollars. A painful lesson, but I knew I was lucky to have escaped it, having lost only that. I shook it off, focused on teaching, and moved on. Then came the thing that happens to everyone who moves to a new country, the honeymoon period. When you first arrive, everything carries a kind of euphoria. You're finding a new hairdresser, a new doctor, a new dentist, a new cafe. You're eating food you've never tasted, getting lost on streets you've never seen, meeting people who open up your world. Everything is new, and it is simply intoxicating. I was loving every bit of it. And then, about 4 months in, it hit me all at once. The bureaucracy, the traffic, the empty bank account, the constant struggle to communicate in a language I didn't speak, the absence of food I actually wanted to eat. It all landed on me at the same time, around January 2014, and I got terribly down. Because the realization was unavoidable, this was life now, not the rose-coloured version I had arrived with in August. This, whatever was left once the euphoria wore off. But I rebuilt. I had to. 2014 was a poor year, an unhealthy year, and I won't pretend otherwise. Too much alcohol, too much of the wrong food, too much of letting things slide. It wasn't until the end of 2014, or even the start of 2015, that I began to restructure. I bought a bicycle. I started running. I joined the gym and became a regular, going up to 10 times a week, running, doing classes, pushing myself, and I loved it. The drinking was still there, but I was exercising so hard and so often that it wasn't wrecking me the way it had been. By the middle of 2015, I'd set myself a target. On my 50th birthday in 2017, I was going to run 50 kilometres. At the end of 2014, I couldn't run 5. Setting that goal was the thing that changed everything. I started losing weight, getting strong, getting healthy in a way I hadn't been for years. I would be up at 4 in the morning, 10 kilometres done before school started at 7, and then left and I felt like Superman. Genuinely. That life carried me all the way through to 2024, when a severe case of post-traumatic stress disorder brought me to my knees and the running stopped. But that story is for another chapter. What matters here is that those early months in Vietnam gave me, underneath all the chaos and the money lost and the adjustment and the hard mornings, I found a home. As broken as my circumstances were, as uncertain as the future looked, something in me settled in a way it had never been in Australia. I was in a place my heart had been pointing towards since I was a kid, lying in a bedroom in Blacktown, dreaming of somewhere far away. Vietnam wasn't perfect. It was difficult, and at times it was brutal, but it was mine. And that took me onto everything that came after.